He was supposed to be the face of a new era of superheroes. Ezra Miller, the star of The Flash, a film that cost Warner hundreds of millions of dollars, stood on the edge of a multi-year franchise. Fans were ready. The studio was all in. Then the story bent in the opposite direction. In 2020, a disturbing clip raced across the internet. In 2022, reports of arrests and protective orders piled up. By early 2023, a conditional sentence put a legal period on a chaotic chapter. From idealized hero on screen to a real-world antihero, the pivot was whiplash. How did Flash become Crash? Tonight, let's trace the arc from breakout promise to fallout, and what it says about celebrity, accountability, and the machinery of modern fandom. Ezra Miller was born in 1992 in New Jersey and, from early on, refused to fit neatly into a box. Before most teenagers are worrying about prom, Miller was training in opera and testing the edges of performance. That sense of trying on forms, vocally, physically, emotionally, would become a signature. When acting took center stage, it didn't take long for the industry to notice. The first big jolt came with We Need to Talk About Kevin in 2011, a film that asks whether monstrosity is born or made. Miller's portrayal of a volatile, unreadable teen was chilling without turning into caricature, and critics called it a breakout for a reason. You could sense craft, control, and a willingness to go to difficult places. The next year, The Perks of Being a Wallflower revealed a different gear: tender, witty, wounded yet generous. It was the kind of performance that rips past plot and lodges inside a demographic. For a slice of Gen Z, this was a mirror held up with empathy. The contrast between those two roles created an aura. Here was a young actor capable of both menace and warmth, of theatricality and restraint. Doors opened quickly. Indie films offered complex characters. Mainstream projects dangled bigger stages. In 2014, one of the biggest studios in the world placed a bet. Ezra Miller would be Barry Allen, the Flash, inside the DC Extended Universe. Cameos followed in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice and Justice League, and the fan footage, meet and greets, selfies, convention lines, suggested a performer who energized the room. Then the first hairline fractures appeared. In April 2020, while the world was locked down and streaming was swallowing our evenings whole, a short, jarring video from Reykjavik, Iceland, began to circulate online. It seemed to show Miller grabbing a fan by the throat and moving her toward the ground. The clip was brief but potent. Brevity can make images harder to explain away. Confusion calcified into outrage. Outrage dissolved into memes. And suddenly the question wasn't only, when is The Flash coming out? But, who exactly is the person inside that suit? The studio response, at the time, was silence. A common corporate reflex built on the hope that the internet's attention will find a new toy. For a while it did. But that clip was a first warning bell, and the echo didn't fade. If 2020 was a flashing hazard light, 2022 became the pileup. Reports from Hawaii described late-night disruptions, arguments spiraling into police calls, and 2 arrests in quick succession. One incident allegedly involved a karaoke bar, a microphone, and simmering tempers. Another reportedly stemmed from a confrontation at a private gathering. Separate from those, families in Massachusetts and elsewhere sought protective orders, citing unsettling interactions. The language in filings and statements was sharp. The denials and counterstatements were equally emphatic. Then came a story that grabbed even more attention. The parents of activist Tokata Iron Eye's alleged manipulation and control. Tokata publicly rejected that characterization. Online, uncertainty didn't slow judgment. Timelines, screenshots, and theories multiplied. Depending on your feed, you could scroll through 2 incompatible realities. One that treated Ezra as a dangerous figure, and another that insisted the storm was mostly manufactured. The common denominator was chaos. The thing about public life is that it runs on two calendars. There is the calendar of headlines, instantaneous, emotional, optimized for engagement. And there is the calendar of courts, slow, procedural, uninterested in trending topics. In 2023, those calendars converged. In Vermont, after an investigation into a residential break-in and the disappearance of bottles of wine, Miller entered a plea agreement that avoided jail time, but included a year of probation, a fine, and conditions like counseling. For observers who had watched the previous year's swirl, this moment felt smaller than the discourse that preceded it. A normal crime, juxtaposed with outsized celebrity. But verdicts are not written by Twitter. They are written by statute. The legal chapter turned a page, even if the cultural one didn't. Meanwhile, the giant machine built around the Flash lurched forward. Motion pictures are long pipelines. You do not turn off a $200 million tap without flooding the floor. The film hit theaters in summer 2023, burdened with impossible hopes. On paper, it was a pivot point for a struggling DC slate, a reset button that could open new paths. Reality was harsher. Marketing a tentpole is an orchestra, lead actor, supporting cast, director, legacy stars. Remove the first instrument, and everything sounds off-key. Without the usual junkets and fan-facing promotion from its star, the campaign leaned on nostalgia, cameos, and the promise of multiversal delight. Reviews were mixed. Many praised Miller's comic timing and emotional beats. Many criticized visual effects and the film's tonal whiplash. At the box office, the numbers disappointed. Postmortems bloomed. Was it superhero fatigue, the controversies, franchise confusion, or just a film that didn't fully work? The truest answer may be all of the above. For the fandom, there was a more personal reckoning. Comic culture blurs the boundary between character and performer. When you fall in love with Barry Allen, the hopeful, awkward, relentlessly decent scientist who runs toward danger, it's almost impossible not to transfer some of that affection to the person in the suit. The 2020 clip cracked that illusion. The 2022 headline shattered it. Online communities split into camps. Those who argued that accountability required consequences, those who emphasized due process and mental health privacy, and those who wanted the art quarantined from the artist. Algorithms, indifferent to nuance, fed each camp what it wanted most. In that environment, reconciliation becomes rare. Whether you think Ezra Miller is irredeemable, misunderstood, or something in between often depends on which staircase of evidence you climbed. A separate storyline unfolded at the studio level. DC's cinematic universe, already wobbling from creative misfires and brand fatigue, announced a hard reboot under new leadership. Reboots are ruthless. They are promises to audiences that, whatever confused you before, forget it, this is the new map. For legacy actors and characters, that means contracts dissolve into questions. With plans refocused on a fresh continuity, the likelihood of Miller continuing as the big screen Barry Allen dimmed. It wasn't just about controversy. It was about a tabula rasa strategy that rarely carries over symbols from the previous chalkboard. Add to that a cooled industry appetite for risk around volatile headlines, and you get a career picture placed on pause. In public statements over this period, Miller referenced ongoing treatment and a commitment to recovery. That matters. When a person says they are seeking help, the humane response is to take that seriously. But help is a verb. It takes time. It happens off camera, and it doesn't always produce updates neat enough for a press release. We do not get to watch accountability. We only get to witness its consequences. The uncomfortable truth is that audiences are used to the opposite. We are used to apology tours, studio-crafted statements, step-by-step image rehabilitation. The post-2020 media world is less forgiving of that choreography and more suspicious of any attempt to manufacture closure. If a comeback ever arrives, it will need to feel earned in ways that publicists cannot engineer. There's a broader lesson here about the myths we sell each other. Superheroes are aspiration machines. They condense our best fantasies about courage, sacrifice, and second chances into 2 hours of kinetic color. When an actor puts on a cape or a cowl, the lines blur. We don't just want them to portray virtue. We want them to embody it. That's not fair. It is also, to some extent, inevitable. The marketing depends on it. The parasocial relationships depend on it. The disappointment that follows, when real people behave like real people, messily, is the price we pay for confusing performance with personhood. None of this erases the work. It also doesn't excuse the harm people say they experienced. Two things can be true at once. Miller's early roles mattered to a generation who felt seen for the first time in a multiplex. And the people who asked courts for protection deserved to be taken seriously, without being drowned out by the volume of stan culture. Holding both truths is the adult version of fandom. It is slower, more cautious, less memeable, and more humane. If you strip away the celebrity layer, the spine of the story is banal in the saddest way. A talented person enters a turbulence of alleged aggression, erratic choices, and legal consequences. The institutions around them alternate between enabling, denial, and damage control. The audience, whiplashed, tries to square admiration with alarm. The details are unique, but the pattern is familiar, stretching from rock stars to athletes to influencers. The question isn't, how could this happen? The question is, why are we still so bad at responding when it does? Accountability, if it means anything, has to contain 3 components: acknowledgement of harm, a plan to repair, and a sustained change in behavior. Public life rarely lets us confirm any of those. We look for proxies instead: court outcomes, therapy references, the tone of a statement, the presence or absence of work offers. None are perfect. In the absence of perfect information, prudence is a decent substitute. Press pause, stop romanticizing volatility as edge, and make safety the baseline for any professional environment. Studios and sets are workplaces before they are myth factories. As for The Flash, the film now sits in a strange cinematic limbo. Not a disaster, not a triumph. A relic from a franchise that decided to reboot while the body was still warm. Some viewers will return to it years from now and find moments of tenderness and humor that have nothing to do with headlines. Others will never be able to separate the art from the noise. Both reactions are valid. Our thresholds for compartmentalization differ. That's not hypocrisy, that's humanity. If there is a path forward for Ezra Miller, it will likely look nothing like the one imagined in 2014. It will be smaller, slower, and less concerned with iconography. It may involve theater or indie projects, if and when trust can be rebuilt. It may involve long stretches of not working publicly at all. The thing about running, even for a character defined by speed, is that you can't sprint your way out of consequences. You walk. One step, then another. And the people you harmed, or scared, or confused, have first say in whether those steps count. In the end, the question that keeps echoing is simple: what do we owe each other when the mask slips? Not blind loyalty. Not gleeful cancellation. We owe each other steadiness, the kind that says allegations deserve real scrutiny, safety matters more than stardom, and recovery, if it's real, is a marathon without cameras. Flash was built on speed. Accountability isn't. If there's redemption here someday, it won't be cinematic. It will be quiet, specific, and earned, far from the red suit, measured not in opening weekends, but in the ordinary work of being better than before.